Hey guys, Level Cap here, and today I am excited to talk about Star Citizen's future. Chris Roberts has just posted a very long and thorough letter from the chairman blog about the past, present, and future of Star Citizen, and honestly, it's a fantastic read for anyone who's interested in this project. After reading, it left me energized and excited about the game. Chris's passion for this project is undeniable and it's extremely contagious. It's also inspiring to see his passion and confidence is stronger than ever as the team reaches new milestones with its development. I want to talk about some of my favorite stuff in this blog post and what it means to me as a player and fan. And also, before I get into all that stuff, the Invictus event in Star Citizen is actually starting today. This is an in-game event that celebrates the UEE, aka United Earth Empire's Navy, and sort of functions as an in-game recruitment event, kind of like a real-world Fleet Week. But what's cool about this event is that you can actually download and play the game for free and rent a ton of Navy ships for free during the week, which makes it a fantastic opportunity to see what Star Citizen is all about without having to make a financial investment. The in-game expo is also a really cool place to look at ships in a convention center style environment. The event also has several other opportunities like a Javelin destroyer tour. The ship is massive and walking around its interior gives you a sense of what actually goes into making a massive ship in this game. There's also fleet flyby events where you can see a Bengal carrier, which basically dwarfs any ship you've seen so far. Just make sure you don't anger it or its massive quad railgun turret might take a shot at you. Also, there's some sort of new FPS event that will kick off at some point, but I'm not sure if it's actually going to occur during the Invictus week or not. So I'm excited to see what that's all about. Now, regarding the letter from the chairman blog, it does a good job of summarizing what's actually been achieved in 2021, and it's actually kind of amazing just how much stuff has been added to the game. Since all this stuff happens over a longer period of time, it makes it easy to forget just how much has been accomplished, especially in the recent years. In 2021, they launched the Xeno threat Incursion, which is sort of like capital ships slugging it out in space, and everybody in the server is basically invited to come by and help out in this massive battle. It looks awesome. It's super cool to see the giant ships fighting it out. They added drive-in caves and sinkholes that you can explore and mine in, and these just pop up on planets. There's new planet tech improvements. They added ship-to-station docking for the larger ships that can't fit in hangars, and it looks pretty darn cool when they're docked. They added the Javelin tour last year, which again you can explore in the Invictus launch week that's happening right now, which I highly recommend doing so. They finished, quote-unquote, all the major locations in the Stanton system by launching the gas giant Crusader in the landing zone of Orison. And with this came volumetric clouds, which adds a whole new sense of realism to planets, especially when you're coming down through the atmosphere. They look fantastic. They added medical gameplay, which involves all sorts of wound treatment and healing certain ailments. They added looting, bombing, and personal inventory. There were major improvements to both performance and stability, and a drastic reduction in server crashes, which were basically a meme, and for the most part are very, very uncommon now. They updated the Jumptown event, which is kind of a cool way of bringing players together for the potential of making massive profits and to see if they work together or fight each other. It's kind of a cool emergent gameplay event. And then in 2022, they added ship-to-ship refueling mechanics, which are super cool to see. And there's also a massive performance gain for many players with the 3.17 update. Now, after that look back, Chris also talked about the player growth with the community, and I just wanted to quote him here. He says, "We are seeing over 2,000 new players a day joining the verse. Our DAU, daily active users, has grown by over 50% since the numbers I shared in my last letter from the chairman in December 2020. And with this latest patch, we're enjoying double the daily login traffic of our last April patch launch. We're enjoying more monthly active users, which is well beyond the highs of 2020, and we have nearly 1 million new accounts created since then, and more than 500,000 new pledging players joining the game. And this week we had our 2 millionth unique player login to play Star Citizen. We are on track this year to break 4 million total accounts, over 1 million unique logins this year alone, and more than 500 million in lifetime revenue. Those numbers are absolutely crazy and they're very exciting. What Star Citizen has kind of become to me in 2021 and going into 2022 is a game that's less of a question of will it be finished and more of a question of when will it be finished. Because over the course of Star Citizen's development history, there's been times where articles would come out talking about funding drying up, rumors about production not going well and slowdowns and all these things. And some of them were true, some of them weren't, but it gave a sense of uncertainty along the way of like, hey, is this project actually going to be able to accomplish what it wants to do? And this blog post, especially what I'm going to talk about with the road to 4.0, or rather what Chris talks about with the road to 4.0, really has just completely changed the perception of Star Citizen in my mind. It's no longer a question mark game. It's something that I'm enjoying right now. I like playing it right now. Every bit of new content added to the game adds a new thing I can do in the game, and it's exciting, and it seems like a lot more of the general public is jumping on board. That being said, it's still a rough experience. It's still very much a game in its alpha, so I think it's only for the people that are truly inspired at this point, and as the game becomes more and more polished and more fleshed out, especially over this next year in the road to 4.0, I think it's really going to open the doors wide open for a much larger player base. And that being said, let's talk about the road to 4.0 and what's coming in the somewhat near future. I'm going to go ahead and quote some of the blog posts here. This year, we find ourselves on a similar path with 3 huge technology initiatives that will fundamentally change the experience and immersion into Star Citizen. The first of these is what we're calling Persistent Entity Streaming, PES, which is the foundational tech that will enable server meshing. PES is the hardest part of the work needed for server meshing, and it's one that has required the most engineering. It fundamentally changes how we record state in the universe and delivers a level of persistence that you just don't see in other games, whether they are MMOs or even single-player experiences. Up until now, all persistence in the game has been tied to a player's inventory, ships you own, or items you hold physically or in the virtual inventories of items you own. If you have physically attached an item inside of your vehicle, say a rifle to a weapons rack, when you log out or stow the vehicle, it'll remember all the attached items and anything in that vehicle's virtual inventory. However, if you drop or place something loosely, even inside of a ship that you own, it will not be associated with any player inventory. So when you log out or if the server crashes, that item won't be there when logging on or rejoining. With Persistent Entity Streaming, we are recording the state of every dynamic object in the game, irrelevant of whether it is owned or held by a player. That means you could drop a gun or a med pen in a forested area on Microtech and return several days later after logging out to find the gun or med pen still there, assuming another player doesn't grab them. Now, Chris offers a bit more info about the work that went into the system, but I'm going to skip ahead to the wrap-up of Persistent Entity Streaming. He says, getting Persistent Entity Streaming to work would require the bulk of the tech that we needed to make server meshing viable. I'm happy to report that after 16 months of extensively focused work by 18 engineers, 3 dedicated QA, and 4 producers spread between CIG and Turbulent, who are managing the backend database in the cloud and its related services, that the team were able to demonstrate Persistent Entity Streaming working last week in our weekly internal persistence universe update meeting. End of quote. Now, this tech in itself sounds phenomenal. It's something that I've never seen employed in a game of this scale before, or probably to this degree before. Some of the examples that I think of in my head of using this in a way that could be cool, I definitely think of Star Wars with Rey's character salvaging those old Star Destroyers from the Battle of Jakku. That could be something in Star Citizen where you have javelins and Bengals and Idrises like going at it over Daymar, and all of a sudden they start getting knocked out and crashing into the planet of Daymar with giant wreckages on the surface. Those would be very valuable for salvage, and salvage is a gameplay loop that's coming in the very near future. So the idea that players and their big battles and org battles could actually facilitate entire gameplay loops for other people not involved, and this could happen days later, months later, maybe even years later, if Persistent Entity Streaming actually retains that data for that period of time, could be amazing, especially if they integrate some of their weathering tech that they've been showing for player models and stuff like that, where if it lands on a swampy or a marshy planet, things could get overgrown or covered in mud, or a desert planet, they could get sandblasted and look worn out and worn away. That would be awesome. Like players creating these environments after what they've done, after being there. They give more examples about how this could be used in the blog post, and it is very, very exciting. I mean, like, there's all sorts of other cool tech coming with Star Citizen, but persistent entity streaming, if you crash on a planet, your ship's gonna be there until somebody salvages that ship, or maybe you want to come back if you forget about it for a week and you're like, you know what, I think I left a pretty good piece of armor in the inventory on that ship, and I reclaimed the insurance on it a while ago, but maybe I can go find the wreck and go get that piece of armor. That would be amazing. And that's been really one of the main turning points for Star Citizen, is the persistence tech coming into the game. Things saving in the game, saving your money, saving the ships that you buy, saving your location, being able to log out in a bed in a spaceship in space, and it's saving your location in space when you log back in. All of that tech has added a huge amount of replayability to Star Citizen and just made the universe feel so much more alive. But I didn't really think about the scale or scope of what persistence could actually be. And this persistent entity streaming tech that they're going to be employing, hopefully in the near future, sounds like a real, true game changer, and it's going to turn Star Citizen into something that no other game offers, and probably won't even be close to offering for quite some time. Now, that's just the first bit of major tech that they're trying to get into the game this year. The second bit is this, and I'm going to quote: "Alongside our persistent streaming work, the engine and graphic team have been making great progress on the second big technical initiative we've been working on the past 2 years, a complete replacement of our graphics engine with what we call Gen 12, which is multi-threaded and a much more efficient approach to rendering, which gets the most out of modern graphics APIs like Vulkan." End quote. And I'll just add on to this, I believe the dev team has already been implementing some of this, so some of it's already in the game. And I saw a post earlier this year where they talked about, somewhere from 15 to 20% performance improvement over the course of the rest of the year, which, who's going to complain about getting more FPS and a smoother running game? It sounds fantastic to me. And then Chris goes on to talk about the next bit of tech, and I quote, "This leaves us with our third large technical initiative, server meshing. As you might have guessed, we will approach server meshing in much more the same way that we are rolling out persistent entity streaming. Star Citizen Alpha 4.0 will be a truly new era in Star Citizen. It'll mean our final tech building block, server meshing, will have been delivered. The first implementation will be what we call static server meshing, where each server is given a defined area to simulate, but as soon as static server meshing is stable, we will move toward dynamic server meshing with subsequent releases, which will allow much more scalability, as servers will not be bound by location, but instead will be distributed by load, allowing for much better simulation performance in any given area of the universe. With 4.0, we'll also get our second star system, Pyro, and we will begin the process of adding more and more content, gameplay, and polish to get us to beta. For all of us at CIG, server meshing and 4.0 represent taking that next big leap to populating the verse with the promise of content and gameplay that will turn Star Citizen into the rich, living universe that exceeds the promise we set before us those many years ago. And to add on to this just a little bit for anyone who's not super sure about what server meshing even means, it's basically the tech that they're inventing for this game to distribute the load of everything that's happening in the game world among multiple servers in a pretty different way to what traditional MMOs do, where at any given point you may be communicating with multiple servers that are all handling different aspects of the game world, and it's basically going to allow them to simulate the world of this scale and fidelity that they want, which is something you just can't do without this technology. It's very deep, very complex, and there's some in-depth videos talking about it if you're at all interested in how it's going to work in Star Citizen. It's some pretty cool tech. And they mentioned that they're looking to get this first static server meshing in the game Q1 2023, maybe later. We'll have to see. But this year, persistent entity streaming and hopefully Gen 12 graphics API coming into the game to improve performance a lot more, not to mention a ton of other features and spaceships and all that kind of stuff. So it seems like 2022 is shaping up to be a pretty darn good year. I like that they're being a bit more realistic with their timelines and stuff. They're like, we're going to try and hit this. One of the major points of this blog post too was that persistent entity streaming, being such a complicated piece of technology that took them 16 months of like hardcore work to develop, is going to require a lot more testing than the average patch. So they anticipate the PTU phase for the 3.18 patch, which is the next major patch, to take a lot longer than usual, potentially 2 to 3 months of decent PTU testing to make sure they work out all the major bugs. Because, I mean, if you think about it, if objects can stay in the game world forever, okay, how's that going to break the game? It's probably going to break the game in a lot of different ways. And they are anticipating some of these, but I'm sure a bunch they are not anticipating. So hopefully the extended testing can work a lot of that stuff out. But what was nice about them announcing that basically the next patch is going to take a bit longer than their average time frame is that they said, don't worry, more content is coming. Patch 3.17.2, I believe they said, is going to add a whole bunch of new content, new missions, new stuff in the game. So it's not a, hey guys, hold tight while we work on these big, really important concepts and you're not going to see anything new for months and months and months. It's a, hey, don't worry, we're going to still deliver you some new content and new fun stuff to do in the game while we're testing these bigger ideas, and then we'll get patched into the game at a later date. And again, the blog post covers the big concept items and doesn't focus as much on like, specific spaceships that are being added to the game, or even stuff like cargo refractor and the new salvaging gameplay loops, which are actually going to be pretty substantial in terms of how they change the current persistent universe and what kind of things they add to the game. And so after reading this post, I know some people are going to read it and be like, next patch is delayed, and like that'll be the takeaway or whatever. But what's so exciting about this for me is, for anyone who's been following this project since its inception, which I have, admittedly not super closely during some of the years, but definitely recently, I've just been absolutely addicted to every little bit of news that comes out for the game. This is for the first time ever that Chris or any developer has been like, hey, we're really close to having all the major building blocks needed to create the universe that we've promised to you basically done. I mean, we're still a ways out. Server meshing is still a little ways out. Hopefully early next year is when we'll get the static server meshing, fingers crossed if everything starts going well and persistent entity streaming goes into the game smoothly. But I mean, this is really close. For anyone who's been following the game for 10 years, saying like early next year, that's crazy close to getting those building blocks in. Now, it doesn't mean the game's going to be finished or even close to being finished, but for what essentially has been 10 years worth of development, the reason behind not getting to try out or test all these cool new features or saying, hey, when do we get this? When do we get that feature? It's always been like, well, sorry, server meshing is what we need for that to come into the game. Sorry, we need this new piece of tech. We need that new piece of tech in order to implement this feature that we've promised to you. So having all those building blocks, having all those pieces of tech in the game, and finally able to roll out new content that takes advantage of the new tech is going to be massive. It's going to be absolutely massive for not just the player base, but for people who are curious about the game and getting into the game. And I just paused my recording for a second and listened back to what I'm saying, and I do sound like a total fanboy right now, but I can't hide my enthusiasm for what's happening. I mean, Star Citizen is that game that I've wanted since I was a kid, and I think that speaks to a lot of other gamers out there where you're like, hey, what if there was a game that was so massive in scale and had stuff that persisted, and you could build things, and you could fly spaceships around, and you could fly giant spaceships with all your friends, and you could do all these things. Star Citizen is checking off all those little check boxes that I've sort of made in my mind about what future gaming could be. And Star Citizen is like the next era of gaming, and actually seeing it come into the light and actually seeing its vision start to be realized finally after a long period of development is so darn exciting. And maybe some of my excitement will rub off on you guys and turn some skeptics into some Star Citizen gamers, but I have no doubts that within the next few years at least, most PC gamers will be trying out Star Citizen because of the incredible progress I think it's going to be making. It's pretty exciting. I'm already enjoying it right now, and everything that they're talking about adding to the game is just icing on the cake for anyone who's already in the game world regularly and having fun. Anyway, to kind of wrap up this video, again, the Invictus thing is happening right now, so if you've never played Star Citizen before, it's a good opportunity to hop into the game without having to spend a dime and see what it's all about. And if you make an account, use my referral code to get an extra bit of credits in game that'll help you start off with buying a few bits of gear that you might need. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.